Welcome to Eternal Family Adoptions, where members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints share stories and secrets of building forever families through faith-centered adoptions. I'm Donna Pope. Join us as we discuss how our faith can guide our adoption journey and create family connections. Welcome to Voices of Adoption, as well as other podcasts that we might use this on. We're here with Gwilliam, and we're super excited to have him as our guest. Derek is a partner at Campbell Williams, Pearson, Nelson, and Hall. He has been an attorney for how many years, Derek?
23 years.
23 years. And he specializes in civil litigation, medical malpractice, adoption law, product liability, and personal injury defense. And he's really been a lot into medical malpractice. How did you get involved in that, Derek?
After law school, I went to my prior firm before I came here. I was at a downtown Salt Lake firm called Snow Christensen and Martineau. And as a young lawyer out of law school, you go to those big firms and you just work for whoever they tell you to work for. And I did that for a year or so. And then I found a partner that did medical malpractice work. And I said, let me try one of your cases with you. And I loved it. And we clicked and worked well together. And I started working exclusively for him. And we were together 17 years doing that work before I got recruited over to join the small med mal defense firm.
Okay. So he represents lawyers and doctors and hospitals, but more interesting for this podcast is that he also does adoption law. He is with the American Academy of Adoption Attorneys, and most importantly, he's the father of 2 adopted children. So that's where we're going to start, if you're okay with that, Derek, is tell us a little bit about your family, about your adoption story, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm a proud dad. You can see a picture here behind me on my desk of 2 kids, Allison and Ian. My daughter is 22 and my son is 18. And I guess they're almost 23 22 and 18. Anyway, my wife Candy and I were married for 9 years and couldn't have a family of our own and tried and didn't work and couldn't figure out why. And you know, the same story that lots of people experience: infertility and frustration and sadness. And but because my wife comes from, she was adopted with her 2 siblings after her parents died when she was 7 or 8 years old. She was adopted by a family friend. And so we always knew that adoption was a possibility for our family if we were going to build one. And eventually we went that way. We signed up with LDS Family Services and waited, like lots of other couples did, to be picked through that agency. And so our daughter, Allison, we found out we were getting her in July of 2003, when I had just graduated from law school and I was studying 18 hours a day for the bar exam. And we had 3 weeks notice before she was born that we were picked to adopt her. And so I had to keep studying because I knew I had to pass this bar exam if I was going to support my family. So it wouldn't help to adopt if I didn't have a job. So I kept studying, and my wife built the nursery and went to the showers and got ready for this new baby. And she was supposed to be born on the second day of the bar exam. And I thought I was going to miss the birth and the placement down in St. George, is where she was born. But it all ended up working out to where her due date got bumped a week later. And so I got to take the bar exam, and then we went to St. George, and she was born a few days later. So as a brand new lawyer, I also went through the adoption process myself for the first time, the legal process. And we used a lawyer named Les England that Donna knows. And we used Les, and he helped us finalize that first adoption. And I asked Les to go to lunch and said, "Tell me about this adoption law stuff." And he was kind and taught me about it and shared his forms and files and said, "You should try it out." So I thought I would. That was the beginning of me wanting to carve out a little part of my legal practice to always help other people that were adopting and to be involved in the adoption world from the legal standpoint. And that's what started it in 2003. And it grew by word of mouth and referrals. And I went through the changes in the Utah adoption world with the closing of the LDS Family Services agency and the changes in the way private agency adoptions are happening over the years. And so my adoption practice has just sort of followed and changed along with the way the industry's gone.
So interestingly, you became a new lawyer and a new dad the same week. So how was that? Which was more valuable?
More valuable, I'm sure being a dad was. Obviously, we were so excited and so happy just to have a family, and you all work with those kind of couples that just long to be parents, and we really were happy to have a little girl. And 4 years later, we were blessed to adopt our son Ian. And so we have two birth mothers that are very special to our family, Brooke in St. George and Kendra, who now lives up in Idaho. She was from Davis County area at the time that she picked us, and we have open adoptions. My kids have grown up knowing their birth mothers and visiting, and we've vacationed with them, and they're both very, very close to their birth mothers, and we've been blessed with very wonderful women that have had a really good positive influence in our kids' lives and allowed us to have really great adoption experiences.
So let's touch on that just a little bit more. Many of the people listening to this may ask themselves, should I have this kind of an open adoption? People get nervous about it. They get nervous. Tell us how it's been for you.
It's been beautiful and wonderful. And I say, if you can do it, I mean, there are certainly situations and circumstances where it doesn't work, even if you want it to. It's just not healthy. It's not right. Something is going on in the lives of the birth parents or in your lives, or it's not the same click and match. So it's not perfect, certainly, and it's not right to have a fully open adoption in every situation. But I'm an advocate for it. I've seen adoptions open up over the years. When my daughter was born, the agency representative had to be at the hospital with us. If we were going to be in the same room as the birth mother, we had to have the agency representative. We couldn't be alone with the birth parent, and the policies changed shortly after that in 2004, 2005, to where they started opening it up. And so I'm an advocate of open adoptions whenever it's healthy. And it's been wonderful for us. And we, like I said, we've got beautiful relationships with our birth mothers. And I'll just give you one quick example. There are times in both of our kids' lives where we have called on their birth mothers and said, "Hey, they're going through this or going through that. Would you give them a call?" And one time, one of our birth mothers came into town to be with them and take them out for the evening and talk. And they just needed them and not us as their parents. And we were so grateful that they were there and willing and were a positive, healthy influence on them in that time that they needed them. And so I'm a big advocate for open adoption when it's the right fit.
Now, I love that, Derek. I know there's two questions I have in relationship to that. As an adoptive mom, there's a little bit of jealousy, I suppose, particularly in moms, towards the biological mom, and there's a fear that I won't be good enough, that I won't be a good enough mom, and this need that they'll have for their biological mom will supersede the need that they have for me. Did you and or your wife ever experience some of those thoughts, and how did you deal with it?
I think those are normal thoughts, but I think it has not been an issue as far as I know with my wife. It has not particularly been an issue, and I think that that's the result of growing up with them in our lives from the very, very beginning. Um, One of my kids, the biological father came into the picture in his teenage years, and that's a very different experience when you meet and introduce a biological parent into an adoption situation when they're older. And bringing that new parent in, it brings up all kinds of feelings with everybody and worries and fears and things like that. But that can also be good and done if handled in the right way, and it's healthy, then that can be beautiful and wonderful as well. And so I think that some of those feelings are normal. We've not, yeah, because we started when they were babies. Allison's a redhead. She gets her red hair from her birth mother. And everybody would look at my wife and then look at me as she was growing up and say, "Where did you get your red hair from?" And she said, "I got it from my hair mommy." And so she always had her hair mom and grew up knowing that her hair came from her birth mother, Brooke. And so it was not an issue for either of us or for my wife, I don't think, because of the healthy relationship that we had starting from the very, very beginning. Might be different if it happens at an older age, or if there's infrequent contact or something, then I could see some of those issues being more difficult.
So how was it when the birth father came in? What complications did that create?
It ours was good. Ours was fine. It was different for me because I had never had a birth father in the picture, and now our son was 14 or 15, and but we enjoyed getting to know him, and we screened and checked and did our best to make sure that he was going to be a good influence and was coming in for the right reasons, and wanted to have a positive impact on our son's life. And it's been good. And I probably had some of those same worries that you just talked about and wondered how it was going to go. And thankfully, my son was aware, and we talked openly with each other. And he reassured me and that he wasn't looking to replace me and his life and all of that sort of thing. And so open communication with your kids as you go through things like that is key and important. And that's what's gotten us through it, is always sharing our feelings and worries and communicating well. And that's helped us navigate that.
Many people would worry that it might put the kids in a bit of a tug of war, that they might feel this divided loyalty. How did you deal with that?
Mostly listening to my kids, and I didn't ever sense or hear from them that they were concerned about that. I think that it depends on the age. It depends on how close the birth parents are. Both of our birth mothers lived in, hours away. And so we didn't see them that frequently. And so it wasn't ever an issue for us necessarily that they felt, because they didn't see them often enough to feel pulled in different directions. They were more like an extended family member that they saw once in a while and talked to on the phone once in a while, or texted with, or something like that. But um, it might be different for a family that's got birth parents down the street, or in the same city, and they want constant contact and always taking them out and doing things. There could be that more potential for that in other situations, but we didn't have that.
I love that there was a time when actually the birth mother was able to help you with one of your kids. I've had that experience before where one of my kids was really struggling and I couldn't resolve it. And so I had to reach out to her to help me resolve it. And having that relationship to be able to do that, that's really valuable. It's a good
Yeah, it
resource.
was beautiful, and we've talked about it many times, and It's something we a connection we share with her, that she knows that we can call her if we need, and hasn't been needed that many times, but when it was, she was there, and our daughter knows that her birth mother loves her and is out there, and they have their own special bond and connection with each other that is not threatening to us, and is not anything we worry about. We love it. We want to foster it and encourage it.
So let's go. Nathan, you have a question? Any questions you want to ask?
I'm just loving all these benefits that he's talking about in open adoption. I'm pondering through that, and it seems like the benefits. I love that you're not just talking about the benefits for you, but you're talking about the benefits for your child. You're talking about hinting at some benefits for the birth mom here. Um, it seems like a healthy open adoption can really help everybody, right? The adoptee can have that support from both sets of parents. The birth mother can have that relationship still with the child, and feel confident that the child's doing well. The child can know that his or her birth parents loved him. What are some of the other benefits that you've seen out there in open adoption as you've worked in the field?
Well, Brooke, our daughter's birth mother, she just had the best attitude and perspective on adoption going into it. She really understood through the pregnancy, or felt, whether it was spiritual or personal or what emotional, whatever, but she felt like, this is their baby that I'm helping bring into this world. And after the placement, the delivery and the placement and all of that, she went on to be sort of a vocal advocate in St. George, and was on the radio and talking and speaking at places about adoption and her experience. And she was just very open about and positive about how good of an experience it was for her, how happy she was with the family she ended up with, and and just overall the blessings that come from adoption. And I loved watching that and hearing that. And our son's birth mother went through something similar later on when he was a little bit older. She became more vocal online and told her story in her way and at her time. And it was just neat to see that they felt some, I don't know if pride's the right word, but there was a light inside, that they were happy and proud of what they did and what their kids have become, and how they're being raised, and the relationships they have with them, and the decisions they made, and the peace they were at for the decisions that they made. That's I think is neat to see from my perspective, that they were able to have a good experience, a healthy experience. They were able to process it and work with it in their time and in their ways, very different from each other and different timings, but they both ended up in the same place, which was that they were that it was a good experience for them. And so I love seeing that side of it, and I've seen that and heard of that. When you're working as a professional, you don't get quite the perspective over time, because you're not involved anymore after a certain point. When I finalize the adoption, I sometimes get update letters or Christmas cards, or see people around town or whatever, but otherwise I don't really know a lot about the long-term uh, impacts of adoption on birth parents. There certainly are difficult situations and difficult experiences that some birth parents have, and those need to be heard and respected. And we need to work as professionals to try to do what we can in our role as adoption professionals, to try to foster and build these experiences that I was blessed to be able to have in my own personal life.
One last question, one follow-up quick question on that. You've talked about challenges that people face. What advice do you have to help families and adoptees and birth parents have a successful open adoption like you guys have experienced?
I think from my experience, but also my professional experience, sort of working on adoptions, I think it's just the relationship that you build in the beginning sets the tone and the nature of what that relationship is going to probably look like for a long time. With one of our kids, with our daughter's birth mother, it was an instant connection between my wife and her the first time they met. And we were close and bonded and connected and loved each other from the first time we met. And we knew it was going to be that way for a long time. Our other birth mother, there was a love there from the beginning, but as we got to know each other and time went on, it grew and it built and it became stronger over time. And that, and so I think the advice I give is focus and pay attention on building that relationship in the beginning as much as you can. But both sides have to allow that. The birth mother has to want that connection and relationship and let them in and be open with them. And the couple needs to do the same thing as well. It needs to be a mutual thing. It can't be forced on one or the other, where it's not going to be genuine and real. And so I think the foundation relationship is really important. And then over time, as you implement your open adoption arrangement, whatever that is, or however that looks, as you implement that, that's when you demonstrate the trust in each other. And we're gonna do what we said we were gonna do when we told you you would get these updates or these visits or this contact or whatever that we promised and said. And you have to build trust with each other, and the birth parents have to let them bond and move on as parents and demonstrate and respect them as the parents now. I mean, there has to be that mutual respect and trust that is built into that relationship. And if all those things are done, then over time, it's going to be a really strong open adoption.
No, that was really good. Thank you for that. You're a lawyer, and I've worked with you on cases that didn't turn out so good. And the relationship was not built and there were problems. So 2 questions. How do you anticipate and prepare for times when maybe it's not as good a relationship? And how do you move through some of those difficult times?
Good question, because it's hard. I don't have answers most of the time, except to encourage them to try to respect the decisions and choices of the other side, of the other person. I'm speaking sort of as if I was representing the couple. And when they don't, sometimes we have conversations about setting boundaries and the need to set boundaries and to hold firm to those boundaries. And that creates tension sometimes, but over time, when again, they learn where each other really are and are going to be, and they respect that and accept that, then they can begin to build on those. But during the difficult times, I advise the couples that you need to stick to what the two of you feel is best for your family and for the child. And then once that is decided, do as much as you can to help and support and respect and to give as you're able to do without conceding the standard or the environment or the safety of your child and your home and your family. But be willing to give as you can to bring her in or to allow her to be a part of it or to build that relationship with her. So it's tough. Sometimes the circumstances just, it blows up and there's nothing that can be done, and everybody tried and it's just not a good fit pre-match and things don't work out. And sometimes after match, they have to cut off contact for a period of time until one side or the other is in a better position and ready and able. And so every circumstance is different, as I'm sure you know. It's hard to sort of give one answer that fits every situation, but there's certainly roller coasters in adoption. They are roller coasters of emotion and feelings that everybody is going to experience.
Yeah. And Derek, I've been with you on some cases where I just so respected and admired how you counseled the adoptive families to remain open, even in the face of a lot of pain, still try to remain open. And where that strength comes from is really, sometimes I'm amazed that they have the strength to do that. And sometimes I think it comes from God. I think that strength actually has to come from a source other than ourselves. So along that line, we're in talking to an LDS audience, which part of this podcast will you adopted through LDS Family Services, and then I think it was in 2014 that they closed their doors. Can you address that, both what you have information on about why they chose to kind of close down, how you felt about it, and it's kind of the aftermath of that.
I don't know that I have any inside information that I can tell. I was consulted a little bit. I maybe attended one meeting or something where it was discussed how they were going to go about winding down. But my understanding and what I think they've said publicly is the truth, which is I just think the dynamics of that agency, the reason it was created in the 70s, President Kimball, I believe, began sort of this adoption program to link together unexpected pregnancies with LDS members, church members that couldn't have their own children, and have an agency and an organization that could help facilitate moving those two groups together and keeping these children in the gospel. And so the purposes of the program when it began, I think over time changed. Well, the purposes didn't change, but the reality of the world changed, and there were less and less placements. So they ended up at a certain point with far more couples wanting to adopt than they had children being placed for adoption in the agency. And I think it just got to the point where it wasn't fulfilling what the true intent and needs of the church and of the intent behind the program. And so I think that was a large part. That's my own opinion as to that was a large part as to why they decided. And the church was subsidizing the cost, large amount of cost for those couples. And so all of those factors come into play in why they ended up deciding to close that, I think. The effect of that in Utah had a huge effect on the adoption community in Utah. You lived through it as an outside agency provider. It flooded the internet with a lot of profiles of couples that were placed sort of out on what we'll call the open market, I guess. I think Nathan knows a little bit about that process and how that all happened and the profiles that were put out there. And so, we ended up moving quickly in Utah from my practice pre-2012 was 90% agency finalizations. And in 2014, it was 80 to 90% private adoptions and very few agency adoptions. I mean, it was just a huge transfer into couples that it wasn't just the church winding down its agency. It was the introduction of social media and the internet and Facebook and Instagram and the ability for people to meet online and connect directly that also happened at the exact same time that the church sort of winded down their agency. And so it resulted in a big market of private adoptions where attorneys and social workers and professionals were handling adoptions privately rather than going through a licensed agency. And that's where I've spent most of my time since then is people call me and say, hey, my dad's coworker's daughter's pregnant and they want us to adopt. Help. What do we do? And I say, sure, let me help you with that. And we do it. And so a lot of organic matches and organic adoptions that started happening naturally or through the internet. And so that changed the dynamics of adoption in Utah, and which is still being felt today.
And it's kind of fun here because you've got Nathan that represents this direct independent adoption very much, and me who represents the agencies more. And so it's kind of a fun little balance here. Go ahead, Nathan.
And Derek, who represents the attorneys and those independent adoptions that we're going through. We really saw it from three very different sides. There was a sadness in me that happened. It was good for me. When the church got out of it, I was in that video with David McConkey when that announcement was made. We made that video together, and the church contracted with us to put those profiles up. And we, at the end of our careers, I think we will look back and there'll be certain things in our careers that will kind of define our lives. There'll be things with our families and things with our careers that we will look at and define and be really proud we were able to be part of. And I'm very grateful we were able to do that and help those families adopt. That was a wonderful experience. I'm so grateful I was able to do that.
About how many, Nathan, adopted at that time?
I don't remember the number off the top of my head. So I don't want to give a wrong number and then someone correct me on that, but it was a substantial number. It was a lot of families we were blessed to be able to be part of. It was kind of like living in a Hallmark movie, as both of you guys know, right? There's the good and the bad, and then it comes to a fun resolution, and you're able to create families. But there was also a sadness of knowing that the good that LDS Family Services was doing was going away, knowing that a lot fewer children were going to be placed for adoption. And I love adoption. I love the good that adoption can do. And knowing that was ending was not a happy thing for me.
We're just so that you know, Derek, Nathan and I are working on something that will kind of enhance the opportunity for people to even more easily connect online, which has kind of died out a little bit, but we're trying to build into it both for them to connect online as well as build in some of these boundaries that you talked about so that they will be safe in developing the relationship. We're in the process of doing that because we like it and it's needed.
Excited to learn more about that in the future.
Yeah, we're trying to disrupt how adoption happens. We're trying to look at how things are happening right now that we don't love, and we're trying to create something that does exactly the opposite, and hopefully do a lot of good.
And so that will be yet to be coming. We're building it right now. So now, Derek, let's go to more of your professional career. So as I've kind of indicated, you're in the process of becoming a judge. And you and I have both stood in front of many judges, and some we loved and some we didn't like so much. So I'm curious why you decided that you wanted to apply to be a judge.
Well, I lots of reasons. I wanted to continue learning. I wanted to continue learning new areas of the law. It's hard for a lawyer to change their area of specialty and start a new practice and get new clients in a new area of law and things like that. But I have a desire to keep learning. I'm someone that if I was independently wealthy, my hobby with my spare time would be auditing university courses and just listening to lectures on Middle East history and politics or anthropology or whatever. I don't know. I just love to listen and learn, and so I think this is a way that I can continue learning the law and learn new areas of the law and work in new areas of the law without without reshaping my entire law practice and starting over. And so that's one way. Frankly, just between the three of us, I'm just working more than I want to, and I'd like to have a little better schedule, more time with my family, and that's that's my own fault that I can't manage my own time. And I'm grateful and blessed to have a busy law practice, and so I don't want that to sound like I'm complaining, but I just I look forward to the stability of a position like that will have some advantages that way. I want to help other people. It sounds weird that as a judge you think you can help people because you're just putting them in jail or divorcing them or whatever, but there are many ways that I look forward to exploring as to how I can have a positive influence in the life of others and do good for other people. And lastly, it's an option that allows me to stay involved in the adoption community. I get to still see adoptions, and I get to just finalize them from the other side of the bench. And that makes me really happy that I don't have to give up my personal connection and love to adoption by going in this direction.
And that makes us very happy too, because we know that you understand the law. And so let's take a minute, because there's a lot of controversies about adoption law. And, Utah sometimes gets the brunt of some of the complaints about adoption law. Would you address kind of the philosophy behind the law in Utah?
Sure. When you think about the law, you have to step back and think, what does that mean? Well, we have, you can see up there, I've got my law books. I've got the state code, the statutes. In one of those books is the Utah Adoption Act. That's the set of laws and statutes that apply to adoptions in Utah. Well, those laws were created by the legislature. So it's the Utah legislature, the House of Representatives and the Utah Senate that make the laws that end up in those books. And they're the ones that create the policy, the philosophy or the laws that apply to adoptions in Utah. What we can and can't do as adoption professionals in Utah is established by the legislature. And if somebody doesn't like the laws in Utah, then they often take it out on the agency or the lawyers or the social workers or the professionals, and we end up getting a bad rap because of the laws in Utah. Well, the professionals are not the ones that create the laws, it's the legislature, right? And so the policy of the state, to summarize and I think directly answer your question, is Utah is a very adoption friendly state. For a long time, it's been the philosophy and the culture and the policy of the state of Utah to encourage adoptions and to promote adoptions. And our laws are friendly and favorable to adoption. And our legislature has for a long, long time protected that and built that and wanted that. And I think they still do. I think they want to provide laws and promote adoption as a way to encourage women to consider adoption as opposed to abortion or other things. And so I think that is the foundation, the traditional and conservative foundation of the policy that our legislature has followed in creating the laws in Utah and our adoption laws. And because they're adoption friendly in the sense that they promote adoption and help facilitate adoption, those contrast with other state laws where those state legislatures' laws and philosophies and perspectives might be different. And so their laws are tighter or stricter or different, or they allow this or don't allow that, or they make you walk 10 more hoops than we might have to walk through in Utah in order to get to the finalization of an adoption. So adoption law is different in every single state, and that's because of the policy and the laws that are created by those state legislatures.
Thank you for joining this episode of Eternal Family Adoptions. I'm Donna Pope. Every child deserves not just a home, but a forever family rooted in love and faith. So visit our website, eternalfamilyadoptions.com, to access faith-based adoption resources and sign up for a newsletter. And join us next time as we continue this journey together.